Magic is recorded live in front of a Twitch audience.
Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Orson.
And let's talk Magic. Today we're going to be discussing a couple different issues. One will be the intentional draws. We're going to touch up with that again. And we're also going to discuss, and then a couple ideas floating around with that.
Yeah.
As well as a couple spoiled cards and the Magic naming of lands, which seems to be a very big issue every single time we have a new set comes out and there's a couple of dual lands or there's this cycle of lands.
Yeah, I'd say if possible, it's a more contentious issue than like some of the stuff like with the intentional draws have been.
Yes.
Like more people are engaged and interested in that, I think. So
yeah, it's pretty wild. Yeah, for sure. So we're just gonna touch base back with the intentional draw. So last episode we had a discussion about where if you decide to intentional draw, you get 0 points for the round, which seemed a little crazy at the time. I think anyone watching that was like, what? And we thought it was crazy even throwing that out there.
Yeah, and we don't like we're not saying that this is the end all be all like solution. It's just an idea we had, So, but interestingly, we've actually seen, independent of us, we've seen some people out there in the community. Some rather big names, actually, in the community,
sure,
tossing out this idea exactly and similar ideas that all have the potential to, in some way or other, influence what could be a solution to this problem.
Yeah, we don't want to name drop, so we're not gonna say people like Kai Budd who were talking about our exact situation. We're not even gonna do that. We're not gonna go that direction.
Yeah, I mean that would just be crass.
Right. So just we're just gonna keep our cool. We're just gonna say let's just talk a little bit more about it. So,
we also won't mention that he said it like the day after we did.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Like maybe I don't know.
Maybe later the next day, or the same day. I mean.
No, it was the next day. No one's keeping track, but like 14 hours. Okay, so.
So there are people who are talking about that specifically as a possible solution. There are people who are talking about other things, and that's kind of what we wanted to talk about. First of all, we're glad that the community is talking about this in this way.
For sure.
As negative as the feedback was after that, the Eric Froelich article that spawned all this, like the community has come together as a whole and has sort of decided that this is an issue that should probably be addressed at some point. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Really cool.
I mean, you have people on different websites. Star City Games, Ross Merriam was up there doing. He posted an article that was the inspiration for our show on Saturday. So it's pretty neat that all over Reddit, there's a big thread on Reddit talking about it.
Yep.
So what are some of the? You saw another idea, didn't you, or did I?
You actually saw the idea first, and then after you discussed that idea, I just kind of want to touch base with. I want to kind of summarize what's important about the idea that we threw out there, but what was some of the ideas that we saw?
So we said that our idea and some other people's idea was to eliminate points for an intentional draw, which is an idea. It is an idea that would fix things, but it's a pretty drastic measure, and it's going to be a new experience for players. It's going to be a lot to get used to. So, like, something that they could do immediately, and this isn't my idea, it's something that I saw in some of the threads following along this.
Okay.
Something that Magic could do immediately that would go a long way to alleviate the issue, but not necessarily solve it all, right?
Okay.
This is something they could put into play right now. Take off of the standings post that gets put up between each round. Take off the tiebreaker information. Okay. Only put up the information that says where you are in the standings.
Okay.
Don't have your percentages of wins and your opponent's percentages of wins and all that information. If you don't have perfect information going into those last few rounds, then you cannot sit there and make those calls about, well, if I do this and so and so does this, then that affects our win ratios like this. Mm-hmm. You have no idea. You're going into that blind. So eventually, you could get to a point where those people in, not necessarily the top few seats, but the people in, like, say, the like 5th through 10th seats, where it's contentious and strange, right? Where there's all the little interactions that can go on that start the collusion to begin with. Those people now go into those, if they take intentional draws or they take concessions or they intentionally concede for their friends or all that sort of things, they're now taking a gamble that what they have done doesn't pay off at all.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that would be... It's an interesting take, and I like that. As I said, I think the exciting thing that we have here is people are coming together and they're trying to... Yeah. The whole idea is we don't want to necessarily become married to an idea because there will be someone that will come along with something better.
Yeah.
But I really like to think that, and there was a pretty nice long little thread on Twitter between Kai Budd and some others, and I chimed in as well. We chimed in as well, talking a little bit about, just this whole maybe what would happen with 0 points, intentional draws, all this stuff. I actually saw Brian Braun-Duin. He had brought up on his little Twitter page about how, okay, everyone's sitting here saying we should do something about intentional draws and everything else, or we should, that's what it was. Someone said, hey, why don't we make it where match points are more? So, like, if you win, you might get, say, 5 or 10 points. And then, if you lose, you get 0. Okay. And he goes, you could give match points 1,000,000 to 1 and then still make intentional draws 1 point. Yeah. And it's going to have the same effect. Right. So, people, right. And we and once again, it's great that people are trying to come up with ideas because sometimes, someone throws out an idea, they might not have thought all the way through, but we might be able to expand upon that, right. And that's important. Yeah. So, even someone trying to think in that sort of outside the box, even though it doesn't work, we're still putting thought to this. We're still trying to solve what is an issue, and I think a lot of people's eyes. Definitely. So now let's kind of go back to what we mentioned on last Saturday.
Well, I do want to put one more point to that, is that it's not only is it an issue in a lot of people's eyes, but the people who don't mind it, that's still an issue that affects them in a way. You know what I mean? So so what I'm saying is that they are still the reason that they don't mind it is because they're okay with taking advantage of that. You know what I mean? But I'm not calling those people out for that because it's part of the rules at the moment. But if we as a community decide that the way the rules work right now is not acceptable, and that the way the rules work right now causes scenarios where people can have problems, then I think just changing those things makes everyone kind of get on board.
Okay, yeah. So with our idea, what we have here is, and this is kind of cool, like someone actually mentioned to me, they said, you know what, like, I think if someone goes 6-0 in an 8-round tournament, they deserve to be in the top 8.
Yeah, I've heard that in a couple places, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I've read it everywhere, too. Yeah. And you know what? Making the intentional draws go to 0, they still can do that. The difference is they might go a little bit lower than they were in the standings, but we should all be here to play the game. Right. Everyone should be at a tournament to try and play the game. So instead of them going a little bit lower, if they battle every round, they might have dropped to that spot anyway because they lost their next 2 rounds. Right. But what they should actually be playing for is that opportunity to play first. Anyone that goes 6-0 is already going to make that top 8. Right. Because the only people they're going to lose to, do you know who they are? People that make it to the top 8. Right. So if your 2 losses came from the people that are in the top 8, you're set, okay? Right. Now, people are going to probably chime in and say, well, yeah, but in these really, 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 really large tournaments, we're not talking about a tournament that's like the 10th biggest GP ever. In that situation, it might get a little bit funky, okay? But as far, even still, no, if you go 13-0 out of 15 rounds, you're going to make it.
Yeah, which is exactly what
we saw. Pretty
odds,
yeah. And that's why, this is how this whole conversation came about, was because Efro thought the guy should concede to him in round 13 because no matter what, he was going to make it in. He was the lone 13-0. Right, and we did go over all that because multiple reasons why the guy wouldn't, and I completely agree. Right. But so that's why if we come up with this intentional draw as a 0, it's a step. Yeah. So I like it. Let's talk a little bit about what was spoiled earlier this morning. Shadows over Innistrad. We've been waiting. We found out not pretty early on, but we found out recently that no other cycle of lands fit in with the names.
Like previously existing.
Yeah. There was no reprints we could throw in. So these were going to be a new, unique set of names, or maybe a rehashed, different name to something that could have always been a surprise.
Functional reprints.
Yeah, functional reprints. But
so yeah, they crunched the numbers and they realized that with the numbering system and the gaps that we knew there were in the lands and stuff,
letters, yeah,
that they couldn't fit in any of the old cycles of 2-color lands.
So today we found out why. There is a brand new cycle of lands, right? And what they do is whenever they come into play. So if you, for example, you have the red-green one. Whenever it comes in play, you have the option of showing a forest or a mountain card in your hand. If you do, it comes in play untapped. If you don't, it comes in play tapped. It itself adds a red and green. So dual lands that are dependent on you having a red or a forest or a mountain in your hand. Right. So first thing that some people started pouncing on, and I knew they were going to go in this direction. I just had this weird feeling because it just seems so. Well, don't these things go hand in hand? Which is you can use the newest duels.
There's no clause about being a basic, right? It just says forest or mountain.
No, it just says forest or mountain.
We can double check real quick.
Yeah, and I'll just go ahead and bring it up just because we have a doubter.
Further that way. No, it's the other way. Sorry.
Here. Port Town. There we go. We'll just bring it up. See, if you reveal a plains or island
so
card.
they'll work with any duel. Yeah.
Exactly, any duel. So, people are going to think, well, wait a minute, now we can have duplicates. We could have, say, 8 white-blue dual lands. The ones
new ones, yeah, and then
the Tango lands could actually make these lands, which we're going to get to a name, these lands come to play on tap. Wow, synergy. But it's not really. I feel like they kind of meet a different deck's requirements. I think these lands are very rarely going to be seen in the same deck.
As the Tangos.
Yeah, well, something like the same. Like I don't think both groups of lands are going to actually make it into the same deck. It's going to be. I'm sure they might somewhere, but it would be.
If we had the Shocks, it might be okay. But the Tangos, no, because the Tangos themselves have a strange.
Exactly, they require basic lands.
Right. Yeah.
So, I've heard a couple different names thrown around. We've heard. What's some of the names you've heard? I've heard some people say...
The Shadowlands.
Shadowlands?
Yeah.
No. We're going to get to why no in a moment.
Yeah.
I've heard show, I've heard handlands, I've heard reveal lands, all these different crazy things. We personally have decided show lands.
Yeah, I like Showlands a lot. That's the hat we're tossing into the ring.
Right. You know why? Because we just can't call these Shadowlands. Why can't we call them Shadowlands?
Because there is such a thing as shadow in the game.
And we had lands like this in the past.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
So wait. Hold on. What were the lands we had in the past? You have to be asking yourself. Secluded Glen.
Right, the Lorwyn lands that...
when they came into
play, 2
play,
colors of mana, and you reveal a
merfolk,
a tribe, from your hand. Blue white was merfolk, blue black was
fairies.
Fairies, yeah.
The red white was giants,
yeah.
right? So we've already had show lands in the past,
right?
So if we would have went and we use our theory now and call these things Shadowlands, that means we would have called these lands Lorwyn lands in the past.
Now it's important to note that those lands never really caught a name.
No, they didn't really. So they would have been Lorwyn lands, and now we'd be saying to ourselves, well, wait a minute, now we have... You can't just go call these things by the block names. It's not descriptive. And if you go back historically, whenever Onslaught came out, the original... Well, here's the funny part. Not the original fetch lands, but the fetch lands you're going to think about, we automatically called them fetch lands. Well before they were... I hear people argue, you know what? They're called fetch lands because they're in 2 different sets. They're in cons. Right? They're in cons.
So you can't call them Onslaught lands
and
cons lands, or you can't call them Onslaught lands and Zendikar lands because of the Zendikar fetches, right?
Right. So they are fetch lands, and we had fetch lands before that, back in Mirage.
Yeah.
I believe that was 1997. I don't know. It feels right. It feels right.
96,
so,
97,
yeah, so we have always...
No, 94.
No, 94
no,
was
97,
before
right.
Ice Age. Ice Age was 95.
Yep, sorry.
So, okay. So we have always been... Shocklands were Shocklands well before they were back into Return to Ravnica. Because I wasn't even playing at Return to Ravnica, and I already knew they were Shocklands from whenever I was playing before. Okay? We have always been always able to come up with a real catchy, cool name.
That has exactly something to do with the mechanic on the land.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's way more descriptive mentally to describe what the land does than to describe where the land came from. Because honestly, I have no idea. I mean, I'm used to them now, but for the longest time, I couldn't have told you what the Scars lands were because they don't do something that reminds me of Scars.
Right.
But the fetch lands fetch. The shock lands shock you.
Mm-hmm.
The tap lands does exactly what it says on the
pain
tin.
lands.
The pain lands.
Yeah.
So I think Wizards is sort of trying to push the community here lately in the last few years to sort of go along with whatever they decide in their reveal articles and stuff. Mm-hmm. What the names of these new cycles of lands are, and I think the players should give them the nicknames based on what they do for quicker mnemonics.
Yeah, for sure. It's great that they're trying to give us a suggestion, but we, the player base, are the ones that ultimately decide. There's no way I can get behind Battlelands. I can't wrap my... when I think Battlelands, I feel like just because
they should have like the word "fight" on them or something, like a fight keyword,
or what someone even said a long time ago, and I had a discussion with them, which was, well, Battlelands, doesn't that sound a little bit like more of one that battles? So would that be? Is it a replacement word for Manlands?
Manlands, yeah.
I've actually heard people confused. They thought Battlelands because they were a
ones
newer
that you
player.
could swing with as a
they thought they were the ones that did battle. Like creatures.
That's pretty funny.
I mean, this is what we're doing to our newer players as opposed to just describing what the land does. Any new player, whenever I told them, I introduced a shock land to them, they understood what a shock land was, even though shock wasn't even in the format. It took a real simple, shock is a card and here's what it does. Oh, well, that's genius.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing.
Right.
Oh, who came up with that? That guy, he deserves a pat on his back.
Yeah. It's elegant and it's simple. Yeah. And it's not as corporate, to use a word.
I don't care whether it's corporate or not. We might just follow with something to say, but I think Wizards should be a little bit more creative, and they should just give us a creative name, and also be more willing to accept us coming up with willing names.
Yeah.
Or, willing names. With these little crazy...
creative names of our own.
Exactly.
I don't think they should try and put a name on it until the community does. Let the community do it, because the community likes it a lot more, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we definitely enjoy being able to, have our own little touch, our own little flavor. And that's why even still people are battling the Battlelands.
Yeah.
I mean,
we still call them Tanglelands because that was a very simple and elegant and sort of funny name for them,
For sure.
It was a complex mechanic to try and wrap up in one word, and they did it.
And somehow someone came, whoever that guy gave, another pat on his back. We just need to be
back patting all kinds of people.
I would do this all day, every day if I had to. So
we're advocating. Rob and Orson put their seal of approval on Showlands.
We are definitely for Showlands. All right, let's go ahead and talk about a couple spoiled cards that came up today or the day before. Let's talk about this one first. I like Call the Bloodline.
The Bloodline.
Yeah. An enchantment, it's 1 black, 1 any.
Uncommon.
Uncommon, you pay 1 any, discard a card, put a 1/1 black Vampire Knight token with lifelink onto the battlefield. Activate this ability only once each turn. Interesting.
Yeah. So we have another 2 mana Madness Enabler, I guess, with a little mana cost on there.
You are going to have to pay 1, yes.
Yeah. But it does fill that position where you want to be casting something on turn 2, right? And I think it's pretty interesting, first of all. It seems really good. Obviously, you're going to get a little stream of dudes off of the thing, right?
Okay.
But I want to point out the fact that this card does the same thing that all of the Madness Enablers we've seen so far do, which is once per turn. Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about that the very first time we saw 1 Madness Enabler and 1 Madness card. We were saying that it looks like they're trying to rein in the power of the original Madness mechanic a little bit.
Well, yeah, the actual Madness Enablers, which is really cool.
That's where the power of Madness came from, really.
Right, and it's also like on the flip side, I feel like they have made the Madness cards themselves
stronger.
Yeah. It's really unique now that. Well, back then, back then we would drop something for 2, and then we would hope we had an Arrogant Worm, because that was the best play. So that on turn 3, we curve into a worm. But now, the fact that there is Incorrigible Youths and the Twins, so now we have 2 different options.
The 2/5, 3/5?
It's a 3/5.
3/5, yeah.
Now we have 2 different options. So
at 3 mana as a Madness card.
Exactly. So we're not going to... Definitely, if we're playing Red-Black Madness, we're not going to be playing just 4 Incorrigible Youths, which is the better of the 2.
Right.
But you have this... And you're not necessarily going to play 8 of those cards total. You're not going to play.
But you can play something between 4 and 8.
Exactly, and that's important for your deck building process. Now you say to yourself, okay, well, this could easily be the 5th.
And we still haven't seen all of the set.
We haven't either.
Yeah.
And this is exciting. They have done a lot to excite me about this set.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how I normally... I'm all over the place with my level of excitement on sets, but this one is definitely probably the highest in recent memories.
Yeah, I mean, I liked some of the stuff that came out in the Zendikar block recently, but I wasn't excited about it.
Right.
And I actually was pretty excited about Khan's block, but I didn't really get a chance to play a whole lot of Standard at that time. So.
Right.
But yeah, this has been a pretty cool set.
Yeah, it's really cool. So
I think too you might point out that while the Madness Enablers in this set compared to the Odyssey block, right, are not multiple use most of the time per single turn. I think what they do is a little bit more powerful.
Because all of them except for Wild Mongrel.
No. Yeah. Wild Mongrel was pretty broken.
Yeah, Wild Mongrel is just disgusting.
But yeah, like individually as a discard outlet, they seem a little stronger because you can't really use them twice in a turn for the most part.
Right, yeah. Since they have that restriction there.
Yeah.
I mean, the Aquamoeba...
So it's a cool balancing.
Yeah, the Aquamoeba compared to the black one we have now, a little bit different. Yeah. You know, that one's power is a little bit less, but Aquamoeba was a little ridiculous anyway.
Yeah.
So...
that was during damage on the stack period, too. So
right, exactly. Yeah. So, call the Bloodline. I think it's going to be... Is it the best Madness Enabler? No, but it's a different type. Yeah. I mean, this is pretty cool that it's a lifelink token.
I mean, we certainly can't start calling out numbers how many you're going to want in a black-red Madness deck.
Because the whole set hasn't been spoiled.
Right. But I could definitely see it slotting in there at least as a couple of...
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the biggest and baddest card that's been spoiled today. And, oh man, I don't know. This card's definitely...
It's high.
It is high on the total set. We're talking... I mean, is this right below the best Planeswalkers?
Yeah.
I think so, too.
I feel like this guy has staying power beyond standard as well.
Yes, this guy, I can't believe we're about to talk about this card. Sin Prodder, 1 red, 2 any, 3/2, Menace.
Devil.
Ooh, yeah. Whoa.
And he's a rare.
Yeah.
So 3/2 for 3 mana with Menace.
Right. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library. Any opponent, right, yes, may have you put that card into your graveyard. If a player does, Sin Prodder deals damage to that player equal to the card's converted mana cost. Otherwise, put that card into your hand. Whoa.
So, there's a lot of text there, but what's boiling down to is you can potentially draw an extra card every turn, or just deal that card's damage at your opponent.
Right, and now sometimes that's going to be a land. Right. I think people are saying, well, it's good, but it's not super good because it's not always giving. There might be times where it lands on top. It's not going to do any damage. You know what though? During your upkeep, you revealed a land off the top of your deck, and that land
they're going to take it probably.
They have the option of either putting it in your hand, which I doubt,
right,
or they're going to put that land in your graveyard. You have just now scryed, with the opportunity to now draw a non-land in a red deck.
Right.
What's also really cool about this guy, I love the fact that the word menace is on here.
Yeah.
Wow. So this guy is able to do damage, able to draw cards potentially, and he's a 3/2 that has to be blocked by 2 creatures.
Yeah, for 3.
For 3.
For 3, yeah. Yeah, he's really powerful.
Yeah, is this guy powerful enough for Modern?
I feel like he might be. I really do.
It's hard to imagine that, but yeah, I see it as well. I think this guy could easily slot into a Modern deck because this is like
a Jund maybe?
Well, I mean, Jund is fine, sure. I mean, he might find a place in Jund, but he's even good enough for mono red. I mean, we don't want extra lands.
Right.
It's the fact that our opponent here's the beauty of this card. Our opponent cannot choose to let this card stay on top of our library.
Right. Yeah, because any card you draw is bound to be more valuable than whatever its mana cost is in damage, right?
Right.
So they're going to be taking just extra damage off of this guy.
For sure.
For free.
For free.
Yeah.
And if it isn't extra damage, once again, it's a land that they either give to you or gets dumped.
Right.
I would love to have that in mono red.
Yeah.
This card is so good, and it's so good because it can just go in a lot of different style decks, whether it's aggressive, it's mid-range, it's standard, it's modern. I think this guy is going to be played a lot.
So if you think about it, in a way, when he's out in play, right, he turns every top card of your library that he's about to reveal, except for lands, into the same decision that the player has to make whenever you cast a Vexing Devil. Do I give the guy this reusable or this value card, or do I take its damage right now and be done with it? They have to make that decision every time he reveals a non-land card, and that's pretty neat. I mean, that's a lot of value for free happening every turn.
Yeah,
yeah.
It is pretty incredible what this guy does.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked about that guy. Out of all the reveals we've had so far, he's really, really high amongst them.
Yeah. I mean, so
I can't even think at the moment what cards I've liked more than him so far. Well, other than like the red green Planeswalker. Or...
Okay, well let me ask you this then, because I know there was a card you were pretty high on 2 weeks ago. I can't remember what it was. I'm about to tell you. How do you think this compares to Avacyn?
Oh, I say that Sin Prodder is more genuinely useful.
Yeah, I
like
agree.
Avacyn needs like a home, where this card just goes into a variety of decks that take red.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, even. Oh man. Oh, my mind is just.
I'm really looking forward to seeing how the metagame shifts after the rotation, because we're coming from a weird metagame with like almost all 4-color decks, you know, and it's almost certainly going to be chopped to two color decks with the occasional 3-color decks after the rotation, which means like the card pools are going to be tighter per deck, but the pool of playable cards is going to be a lot wider because people are going to be playing lots of different color combinations.
Right.
So it's not going to be like the same couple of cards played in a variety of 4-color decks. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. There's going to be people actually choosing to play colors, and then they get to choose cards from that color based upon what they're trying to accomplish.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
It's going to be quite the transition.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to play Standard, which we are actually going to be going to GP Minneapolis, so this will just be a blast. Like, basically a month and a half after this set comes out, we'll get to play with all these new toys.
Yeah.
What do you think about Invocation of Saint Traft?
So if you haven't seen it yet, it is just Geist of Saint Traft, but in enchant creature form.
Okay.
So it's the same casting cost. You stick it on a creature. That creature, addition to whatever else it had already, becomes the Geist of Saint Traft. Does it give it hexproof too?
No.
No. So it doesn't have. It just has the make an angel ability, right?
Yeah, whenever it attacks, put a 4/4 flying angel into play attacking.
I mean, it's okay.
Yeah,
it suffers from the same thing that like any any aura that didn't say draw a card when it comes into play or something suffers from, you know, in that you run the risk of losing a lot of value casting it.
Yeah, they just spoiled this like an hour ago. And I haven't put much thought into it either. It doesn't really seem overpowered. They were really making a big deal, and people were, as they were trying to figure out what's going on, they said something along the lines of, "Hey, help us summon the Geist of Saint Traft," or they were making this big deal about Geist of Saint Traft, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, is he about to get reprinted? He was even in the dual decks, right? Like, oh my God, are we about to see Geist of Saint Traft being reprinted?" And all of a sudden, then we see this.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's nowhere near the power level of Geist.
Yeah, the excitement and build up. I mean, I was even like, oh my gosh, whoa, okay, they're about to do this, and this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it. I mean, again, it's really hard to evaluate a card without seeing everything, but it feels a lot less powerful than a lot of the other stuff we've seen already.
Exactly. And to play it on curve, you're putting this on a 2 casting cost creature. At least Geist was a 3-mana hexproof.
Now, that's not to say that later in the game, like after you've gotten your 5 and 6 dropout, adding this to it isn't a terrible thing. But would you really? I mean, I would rather be playing a removal spell or something.
Or I'd rather if it's like turn 6, I'd rather just be casting
another
something
6.
for 6.
Yeah,
a planeswalker, something big.
It's really awkward.
It might see play.
It needs a home.
It does need a home.
Yeah.
And actually, it might be. Do you think it could go in a deck like? No, I was trying to find other implications for this, and I was thinking like Boggles, but then Boggles, it's not adding any power and toughness. It's just not good enough. I tried helping you. I did.
I mean, I really don't know. It needs, for one thing, to keep it. If you're gonna play it on curve, the card you want, the creature you stick it on wants evasion or something, so that you can keep churning out that angel every turn. And I don't know that outside of maybe like Thopters, such a thing really exists. Like, I don't know, the Madness card we just looked at, the Madness Enabler, I guess, but that gets you into Esper colors and yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's another card that like a very specific strategy has to arise first for people to go, hey, this might work in here. But it doesn't seem like it has an obvious immediate home. Yeah,
I'm not too much into that. Yeah. How about another card that was spoiled earlier? Tireless Tracker. 1 green, 2 any, 3/2. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, investigate. We all know what investigate does by this point. Yeah. And whenever you sacrifice a clue, put a +1/+1 counter on Tireless Tracker. Okay, what do you think about this card? This man is excited about investigating clues, just so you know.
Yeah, like the first thing I got excited about here was the thought that you could sacrifice a clue to anything, not even just the clue's ability, to make this happen.
Okay,
right?
Yeah.
That's pretty neat. I don't think there's a whole lot of sacrifice an artifact in the format, at least not... Like, I literally was just searching for it on Magic.Cards.info the other day, and there's not a whole lot. But I don't know. I like the fact that they're putting this much clue cohesiveness into the set. And it seems like so far they put a lot of it on green, which is weird for an artifact sort of centric. I've seen a lot of blue and I've seen a lot of green.
Yeah, that is kind of weird. That is interesting.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I kind of like about this guy. I don't think he's overpowered per se, but I think it's interesting that now we drop him on turn 3, and if our opponent doesn't deal with him, we can, every turn that we drop a land, we're getting this option to later on pay 2 mana and draw a card.
Yeah.
For every land we play.
Yeah.
So that's intriguing to me. I don't see myself playing this card. I'm more of a control player. But
I really like that the cards that they've put, a lot of the cards that they've put Investigate on are not overcosted to tag that onto it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So like it's cards that you might want to play anyway, which means that by the middle of a game, you might have a stack of clues just sitting there. So once you start getting to a point where maybe your hand is starting to fizzle out a little bit, you have some clues to sacrifice and get back into the game. You know, get back not into the game, but to keep pressure on your board.
Right.
So it's an interesting dynamic that is going to take a lot of thought to make work well, I think.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and you know what's interesting? Whenever all the beginning of this was being spoiled, all the shadows over Innistrad, we kept seeing madness, all of a sudden, like more and more madness, and we weren't getting too many Investigate cards. Now, there's only about 150 cards spoiled.
Yeah.
Okay? So there's still room for this Investigate type deck or Investigate mechanic to just grow even further.
Pick up a lot of new tools. Yeah,
and I'm interested to see where they go with that. I'll tell you something funny I read.
Well, there's another one that interacts with clues as well.
We'll talk about it in a second, but you've got to hear this. This is great.
Okay.
So someone said this. They go, I really, really, really hope that there ends up being a mono blue clue deck.
Blues Clues?
Blues Clues.
As soon as you said blue clue deck, I was like, oh no. Oh god.
Dude, yes.
Okay.
That is a great deck name. And sometimes, I'm going to tell you straight up, sometimes Wizards, they kind of give us decks. We name them based upon what they've done, like Blue-Green Madness. Now it's going to be Red-Black Madness. Like, if they make a mono-blue Investigate clue deck...
It seems like it's coming. You're right.
They were, R&D is just like, oh, please someone discover this. We have this perfect deck.
They built it into the fabric.
It's called Blues Clues. We know you'll get it. and I'm sure whenever anyone in R&D read that, they were immediately like, send to all my friends.
Get it out there.
You guys are going to love this.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But in actuality, it'll probably be blue-red clues. That's what I think. Blue-red clues.
Blue-red clues?
Yes.
Well, why wouldn't it be red-blue clues?
Okay, red blues clues.
I mean, just trying to. You gotta keep. If you're gonna have blue anywhere with a clue deck, you have to mash those two words together.
I have
have anything in front or behind.
I have a vague pet strategy in my mind involving Giraper, Aether Grid, and clues and Thopters.
There are people talking about that. You're all sick. Yeah. Every one of you are just sick. How about you want to discuss this one with them?
Yeah. So there was 2 green clue based cards spoiled like back to back basically.
The one we just discussed.
The other one is called Ulvenwald Mysteries. Okay, it's a green and 2 generic enchantment, uncommon. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, investigate. Whenever you sacrifice a clue, put a 1/1 white human soldier creature token on the battlefield.
Okay.
So it's a little engine. I mean, it doesn't recur itself, but it is a little engine for a creature/clue based deck. So that's pretty neat.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, once again, this doesn't really do much for me or my Jimmy.
Your Jimmies are not getting any stiffer.
I was actually talking about my friend's Jimmys.
Oh,
so, like I have several Jimmys, and
your Jimmies aren't rustled. That's an internet thing.
Yeah, I'm not involved with that.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
So
who looks at the internet?
I know 0 people.
Yeah.
So to recap on the cards we discussed and maybe try and put some value to them. obviously we're not going to talk about the uncommons, but we'll talk about the rares and above. The lands. Where do you think the lands are going to settle? Now, I mean, we didn't say this about the lands. I think the lands are way better because we were so busy talking about the names.
Oh, yeah,
we didn't even discuss them. Gosh.
Yeah, you're right. We skipped right past the actual.
I'll just say real quick, just straight off, first looking at them.
The show lands.
The show lands are way better for being on curve early. And the Tango lands are better for being on curve later on. And they then give you multicolors later on. I've always been a little bit skeptical of the Tango lands without the fetch lands.
Yeah.
They've always kind of
Which is what's going to
me.
happen, is that the fetches are going to rotate, and we're going to be left with the Tangos, and they're going to lose a lot of their cachet.
And I think a lot of people are missing that they are going to lose a lot of their value, but for sure they are going to lose a pile of value. Not being able to decide between searching for one of those or searching for a basic, depending on the board state and how early or late it is in the game.
Yeah.
So, but these lands are definitely better suited for decks that are trying to make sure that turn 1, turn 2, possibly turn 3, we are making sure we're curving.
You're talking about the shows.
The show lands, right.
The problem with the shows is that they're not a sure thing. They're not a lock, you know.
Right.
You can't expect a deck that's playing the shows and wanting to play them early to always have mana available the turn you play them. Unlike the Scars lands, which you could.
Right. For
turns
first
turns 1 through 3, you knew for sure that if you played them, you had the mana of that land available.
Mm-hmm.
So they're more of a liability than the Scars lands, which means that they're not quite as reliable for an aggressive strategy as some of the other duels that we have are.
Right.
They're like straight away, like I would personally rather have shocks than...
Oh, of course, everyone. Yeah. I would love to always have shocks available. If over the years they would have stopped giving us the pain lands and when they gave us the shock
Not
lands...
shocks, I meant pains.
Oh, pains. Oh,
yeah.
okay, well, pain, sure.
Yeah, sorry, pains. I would rather have the pain lands than the show lands.
Sure. Yeah, but the show lands...
Of course, they're not in the same colors right now.
Right. That's a problem. We have allied show lands, and we have...
enemy shock. Pains.
Gosh.
Enemy pains.
Focus.
Pains.
So, yeah, I do. I think even with that being said, they might not always be the most consistent. I think they have... Obviously, they're the better choice for being multicolor... For aggro.
Yeah.
And I really feel like... I mean, I can't figure this out. There's no one really talking about red, black madness.
Yeah, the only madness I've seen discussed so far is blue-red madness, obviously with Jace as an engine.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem. I think people are so focused on how good Jace is because he's wonderful.
He's amazing.
Jace Vryn's Prodigy
He's got to be the strongest card in the...
He's like the best madness enabler there is. Yeah. So they're saying, all right, I want the best madness of enabler there is so I can play everything else. But that style deck doesn't really hit home. I'm not feeling it. What I feel is something that's always on curve, just playing something, being hyper aggressive, get the win.
Yeah,
as quick as possible, less lands.
And you might say that's just an attempt to sort of force the deck that was Blue Green Madness into the current format. But like the point of Blue Green Madness was that it was a tempo deck, you know, and that's how Madness runs. It operates as a tempo strategy, so that you always are getting little extra incremental pieces of card advantage out, right?
Right.
So, I feel like that's what Wizards is trying to give us. They're trying to give us that aggro. I mean, they've practically printed a black-red aggro madness deck with all these vampires and things.
For sure, that very closely mirrors what we had with blue-green madness.
Not to say that there isn't a red-blue madness strategy that could come alive, but I don't know that what we've seen so far supports it beyond Jace so far.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even if it was, I'm sure there's people who are going to argue, well, we can make a 3-color. But once we start getting into 3-color, we're losing a lot of what makes a red-black Madness deck so good, which is consistency with its mana base. I mean, Blue-Green Madness back in the day was basically all basic lands.
Yeah. Because all of the cards in it only had a single mana symbol in their mana cost.
And guess what? That's what we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
That's what we have.
Yeah, all of them. Except for their actual casting costs. And like those don't really, like, you don't expect to ever cast them for that. No one actually cast an Arrogant Worm
for 5 mana.
Yeah, for 5, you know. So.
If they did, they were already behind. So as I'm saying, like I feel like we're just going to be in this super hyper aggressive, and it's so weird because I think people are trying to hold on to what we currently have in standard, which is this 3, 4 color, sometimes 5 color decks.
It's going to be a harsh transition for those people.
It is, and they're trying so hard to just hold on to this kind of slower moving format where you're just always using on curve the most powerful cards for that casting cost number, not based upon its actual casting cost colors wise.
Yeah, your Jeskai blues or Jeskai blacks and your Abzan blues and stuff are not going to survive the rotation.
And they know that, but they're still, as I said, they're trying really hard to hold on to at least a 3 color deck.
Yeah.
And you might be able I think you could hold on to a 3 color control deck, but at the same time, I think that because this red-black madness deck exists, I think we are going to have people are going to have to adapt to that. They're going to have to be ready. They have to be prepared, and that's going to change what is viable.
Right. Because
that is always going to be a deck. And H.C. Fox said, "Blue-black madness for life."
We haven't even considered blue-black madness, really.
Blue-black, okay. Yeah, I could,
sure,
it's probably pretty good.
Well, although I don't know what the black madness cards are yet.
Well,
we have the 1-3-1.
The 3/5.
3/5.
Yeah, the 3/5 madness. It's the other.
I thought that was red.
The red one is madness of a red and 2.
I thought they were both red.
No.
Oh.
The other one's black, which is why I was saying red-black is just...
Yeah.
It's even more consistent.
It's really gelling.
But yeah, I could actually see a blue-black madness.
Yeah, probably.
I'm sure it does exist. And here's the other beauty. We're talking at a time where there's only about 150 cards spoiled of Shadows over Innistrad.
Right.
So we haven't seen the rest. So yeah, I can't wait. And there's just so much that's going to happen.
Yeah, you're right, HC Fox. The black discard outlets we've seen so far are the most valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one was red-black, wasn't it? The one that switched its power and toughness? Was that red-black? Like gold?
No. There is a red-black one you're thinking of. It's Olivia, the new Olivia.
What was the 2 casting cost? Red?
Well, it's
was it
black.
just red or was it black?
Black.
That's the one that goes -3 +3 or whatever? +3
-2 plus... Or +2 -2.
It's black.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there you go. Yeah, exactly. The best discard outlets we've seen so far are black.
If it is red, dang it, give me a sec. Now you're making me question myself.
Yeah.
Why would you do this to me? All right.
I think that's one of the other best ones, and the enchantment we just saw today.
Right. Either way, all of them are in red and black, and now you're really trying to throw me off. But yeah, there easily could be a blue-black.
Yeah, probably.
So, but as I said, as far as consistency, just straight up at a power level without trying to do some of the tricks that maybe blue-black would have, red-black is just going to be the aggressive deck of the format.
I want to point something out real quick that we haven't discussed yet, and I haven't talked to you at all yet about. Okay.
Okay.
Do you remember when Odyssey Block happened and Blue Green Madness happened? Do you remember how the community started complaining about the fact that Wizards was pre-printing us decks?
Yes, I do. Oh my god.
What the hell happened there?
I know. Well, that actually that changed a long time ago. We've been seeing them pretty much trying to build us decks, whether or not we fall for them or we think they're good, like a landfall deck.
I mean, we are definitely
deck.
right back there again because it's very clear that the red and the black are the colors of madness, and it's very clear that blue and now green are definitely the colors of clues. Like it's getting to a point where they're back into that point where they're separating these things out and saying, all right, here's your clue deck, here's your madness deck.
I actually have an interesting theory on that, though. I think that a lot has changed since then.
Yeah.
I think people prefer this.
I think so too.
Yeah, I think people.
They didn't
nowadays,
at the time. They did not at the time. There was such a backlash about that.
They were complaining because they had built them theme decks, and it was just you bought the packs and you eventually put together this deck. They already a pre-con
that had a huge chunk of the cards you actually wanted to play.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was basically a pre-con after buying packs. I can't remember all. There was a lot of complaints about it, but yeah, I think nowadays most players are on board with just understanding that this is the way it is, and if you want to. I mean, there are people right now saying that in the next standard, and they didn't realize at the time, and I've been saying this now for a couple weeks to you, is Dragons of Tarkir looks really good. It looks really good now. They go, wow.
Once it's in isolation from the rest of the content.
Once we no longer have Siege Rhino and all these cards, they've been hogging up the spotlight.
That's something I was going to mention too, is that like, I was just watching the top 8 of the whatever standard event was yesterday. Was it a Pro Tour? Was it a GP? I don't know.
GP Paris.
Yeah. I was watching the top 8 and like, most of the core cards that were in those decks were from Khans and Fate Reforged.
Yep.
So there's going to be this big dust up whenever those rotate out, and there's this gaping vacuum left in the metagame. So
yeah, definitely.
It's going to be really fun to watch people building things and to build things ourselves. Yeah.
Well, or as the people used to say, Magic built the deck for them.
Right. Yeah, we are excited about Black Red Madness. They gave it to us.
But that's because of how much we remember the blue-green.
Yeah.
And, and that's also, I want to talk about this, like blue-green Madness back then, and this, once again, this red-black, it feels so much like the blue-green we had in the past. The only thing we're missing is Roar of Worm. And if you didn't play with Blue-Green Madness back in the day, look up Roar of the Worm.
Circular Logic.
Yeah, Circular Logic, sure. There are people still praying that they print that card. And in which case, if they print Circular Logic, HC Fox, you're in.
For life.
You win. You're right. You win. But as far as this red-black and it being aggressive in the same level, I mean, Blue-Green Madness ran rampant in all the standard tournaments when I used to play back then, and the deck was so good. You ported it straight to what used to be extended.
Yeah.
Now I guess
with very few modifications, it would just went right over there, and it's a bunch of commons and uncommons.
Yeah, that's all the deck was. Yeah, it was wonderful, and I think that's what's going to excite people. And I think we're going to get even higher attendance numbers from tournaments because people will be able to put together this deck for a lot cheaper. But something we didn't talk about. Did you see the new Olivia?
I saw her. I don't remember what she does. But
okay,
I did see her.
Red, black, 1 any.
Right.
A 3/3. She says, whenever you cast a creature spell, you may discard a card from your hand.
Right.
If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature.
On that creature?
Yeah. And it has haste.
Wait, what? Say it again?
Okay. Here. All right. I'm going to bring it up so you can actually read it. We're going to bring this card up for Orson here, guys. 1 second. MTG. Let's see.
I felt like you missed a step there.
No.
You put it into play?
Yeah, it comes into play with haste. No. Whenever you cast creature, I'll show you.
Okay, do that.
Give me a second. All right.
It's not going to be there. Oh, yeah, there we go.
No, I know. I'm just waiting for
Olivia...
yeah, it's red-black.
Newton-John?
What?
Keep going. There she is. Olivia, mobilized for war. A red, a black, and a generic for a 3/3 vampire knight.
Flyer.
Yes, flying. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may discard a card. If you do, put a 1/1 counter on the creature, and it gains haste until end of turn, and becomes a vampire in addition to its other types.
So this
forever.
Right. So this is an interesting madness enabler as well. It's not quite as good as some of the others because you have to cast a creature to then enable madness.
Right.
But what's interesting about it is you could just the wind while casting something for 3 madness. You could fire. I know it is, but I'm just telling you the different options you have here.
Right.
You could. I already knew it was blue.
Fiery Temper.
You could Fiery Temper. There's a lot of different ways that you go about, and this card is already good anyway because it's a 3/3 flyer for 3.
Right.
That's already really strong. So it's another little take on. Here's what I was gonna say. I think that
what's weird is that I haven't really seen anything that capitalizes on Vampire Tribal yet.
Right. Yeah.
I bet it's coming.
Oh,
but
we will.
But I haven't seen it yet. There's been a lot of vampire. Almost all of the Madness enablers and Madness cards have been vampires so far.
Okay, I'm gonna call it right here, right now. Second set. Somehow we'll get the key to this vampire thing.
You think so?
I'm just gonna call it. We haven't seen it yet.
They are all mental mythic in the storyline. They're all going. They have madness. They're going crazy for something to do with the moon. So.
Yeah. So no, but what's interesting about this is it's a mythic, and a lot of people like this card. But what I was trying to say about Red Black Madness is, I think the deck is so good even without this card. This card isn't really necessary. It's a great card.
Which means that they've given us plenty of options for it.
And that's exactly what I wanted to get at. I think people will be able to build a budget Red Black Madness, and it's going to compete very well. It doesn't have to use Olivia.
Yeah.
Which
was the biggest draw of Blue Green Madness, was that it was so budget.
Exactly. Now Olivia is pre-ordering for $20.
I could tell you a story about budget Blue Green Madness, but I think that's for another day.
Yeah, we can save that. Well, that's pretty much the end of this portion of the episode. So we're going to say goodbye, but we're also going to stay for our Twitch viewers. We're just going to say goodbye for the YouTubes.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys.
Yep. Thanks for watching, and make sure you check us out on Twitter at Robin Orson, or we have a Facebook page. Also Robin Orson, facebook.com/Robin Orson.
Thanks for joining Talk Magic.
Yep.